She came seeking peace. He came with murder in his heart. On April 17, 2022, at exactly 7:12 p.m., a 911 call shattered the quiet of a residential street in Cleveland, Ohio. The caller, breathless and frantic, reported a brutal stabbing, multiple wounds, blood pooling across the floor, chaos unfolding. The attacker had been subdued, but this was no home invasion, no robbery gone wrong. It was a church prayer meeting, attended by a dozen faithful souls. The suspect wasn't a stranger. He was an invited guest. The call lasted less than 2 minutes, the caller's trembling voice repeating, "He just lost it," like he became someone else. Squad cars were dispatched within 60 seconds. By 7:19 p.m., officers stormed into a single-story bungalow owned by a woman in her late 50s, who had hosted weekly prayer meetings for over 7 years. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with the metallic tang of blood and the fading scent of incense. A dozen attendees stood frozen, some sobbing, others clutching blood-streaked prayer books. At the center of the living room, a woman lay crumpled on the carpet, blood soaking through the fibers. She was identified as Mary Harper, 46, with multiple stab wounds to her chest, neck, and abdomen. The blood spatter told a story of a rapid, focused assault with no signs of defensive wounds. Paramedics pronounced her dead at 7:24 p.m. This wasn't a neighborhood known for violence. Outside, a spring wreath still hung on the porch. In the kitchen, a tray of freshly baked cookies gave off a faint vanilla scent. But at the heart of it all, Mary lay still, her prayer book open beside her to Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Officers swiftly cordoned off the scene, documenting every inch of the living room. Photographers worked methodically. Front door, hallway, sofa area, dining table, kitchen. Blood on the carpet formed a tight semicircle around where Mary fell, with spatter reaching only a couple of meters to the nearest wall. No overturned furniture, no shattered dishes. The attack was so swift, so precise, it was as if time froze in that moment. The murder weapon, a folding tactical knife with a 4-inch blade, was found on the carpet near the sofa, slick with blood. Clear fingerprints marked the handle. Early analysis confirmed it wasn't from the kitchen. The suspect had brought it with him. The blade's edge was sharp, recently honed, suggesting it wasn't a spur-of-the-moment choice. Of the 11 witnesses, 9 provided coherent statements. Their accounts were strikingly consistent. The attack was instantaneous, without argument or warning. Mary had just finished reading a passage, looked up with a smile, when the suspect whispered something, inaudible to others, and then the knife flashed. One witness, seated diagonally across, recalled he kissed her forehead like a goodbye, and then he struck. It was over in less than half a minute. She didn't even scream. Paramedics examined the wounds, noting their depth and lethality, mostly to the chest and abdomen, ranging from 3 to 5 inches deep, angled upward, suggesting Mary was seated or partially kneeling. Preliminary forensic estimates put the attack's duration at under 25 seconds. The suspect was already subdued when police arrived, face down on the carpet, pinned by 2 male attendees. He didn't resist, didn't speak, just stared blankly ahead. Officers found him with wrists bound by a makeshift belt tie, minor abrasions on his arms, but no signs of a struggle. At 7:27 p.m., he was cuffed and removed from the scene. The house itself showed no irregularities. No signs of a fight, no pried doors or windows. In the kitchen, a pot of coffee was still warm, next to an open Bible with a bookmark tucked into Matthew. Mary's phone sat on the dining table, its screen showing an unread message from a contact labeled Linda Hope House. Investigators noted a critical detail. Mary and the suspect had arrived together. They walked into the house side by side, Mary smiling as she chatted with him. Witnesses said they shared a prayer book and even whispered to each other before the service began. This wasn't a stranger's attack, it was a betrayal by someone known. By 7:50 p.m., the scene was fully secured. The forensic team took over, and Mary's body was transferred to the Cuyahoga County Coroner's Office for autopsy the next day. Time of death was estimated between 7:15 and 7:20 p.m. based on witness timelines and early signs of rigor mortis. Inside Mary's car, officers found a manila envelope on the passenger seat containing several pages of documents, contents unknown but labeled Submit Monday. Her backpack held a tablet and a notebook, the latter's final page scrawled with, "I need peace, but I don't know how to start." At 10:15 p.m., the suspect's identity was formally confirmed. His name was no stranger to Cleveland police databases. Investigators pulled his criminal record and realized this wasn't a simple case. His past was a map of violence and control. The suspect, James Carter, 41, was a Cleveland native whose name appeared repeatedly in Ohio's criminal justice system. His file was thick, a ledger of unresolved tragedies. Investigators pulled his record overnight, uncovering 7 prior arrests for charges ranging from domestic violence to illegal weapons possession. The earliest, in 2013, involved an assault with a blunt object on a former girlfriend, resulting in fractured ribs. The case was dropped when the victim recanted a pattern that repeated across his history. 2 cases, in 2016 and 2019, stood out. Both involved threats and minor injuries to intimate partners, but the victims declined to testify and prosecutors dropped charges for lack of evidence. A 2018 psychological evaluation in Carter's file flagged him as highly controlling in relationships, prone to violence when faced with rejection or separation. It recommended long-term monitoring, but no mandatory treatment was enforced. At the time of Mary's murder, Carter was on probation from a 2021 assault conviction. He was required to check in with a probation officer and attend mandatory anger management classes. Records showed multiple absences, with his latest probation check delayed due to system backlog. A probation officer's report from 3 weeks prior warned that Carter exhibited recent behavioral instability, recommending risk reassessment, but it was shelved, triggering no action. Carter's digital footprint deepened the suspicion. His phone revealed an encrypted messaging app, content still locked, but browser history showed searches over the past 6 weeks for how many stab wounds are fatal, how to subdue someone quickly, and Ohio murder sentencing. These weren't clustered in a single day, but spread out, suggesting a cold, incremental plan. Meanwhile, the investigation turned to Mary Harper's life to piece together her context and possible motives. Mary, 46, was a single mother of 3, with only her youngest, a 16-year-old daughter, still living with her. She held no formal job, but volunteered at a local community center supporting women escaping domestic violence. Known for her warmth and resilience, she was often described as someone who made others feel safe. Mary's phone and laptop offered more clues. Her WhatsApp history showed close contact with community center colleagues. A message from 4 days prior read, "If she comes back Wednesday, bring the journal. She needs to write her story. It came from a contact labeled Casey Shelter, confirming Mary's active role in support work until her final days. Her digital records revealed a covert plan. Over the past 2 months, Mary's browser history included searches on Ohio divorce procedures, protective order applications, and safe exit strategies. She downloaded a PDF titled Ohio Domestic Violence Survivor Guide with metadata showing it was last opened 3 days before the attack. An unfinished document on her laptop titled New Start Plan listed a moving checklist, lawyer contacts, and a new school's address. The manila envelope in Mary's car contained printed documents, an unsigned divorce petition, and a draft protective order. A sticky note read, "Casey says Tuesday's best for court. Prep first." Her calendar marked an appointment for April 19th, labeled Submit Papers. Interviews with Mary's daughter revealed subtle changes. She started locking her bedroom door and charging her phone in the living room. "Never did that before," the daughter said. "She told me it was just stress, but I think she was scared of something." A colleague at the community center provided a sharper lead. She said Mary had privately mentioned feeling watched. She didn't name anyone, but she said if she could make it past Easter, she'd be okay. The mention of Easter struck investigators. Mary had set a mental milestone for safety, one she never reached. Mary's autopsy, completed 36 hours post-mortem, confirmed 11 stab wounds to the chest and abdomen, 4 independently fatal. No defensive wounds suggested the attack was unexpected. Toxicology tests were negative for alcohol or drugs. The only anomaly was a 2-week-old bruise on her left upper arm, consistent with a forceful grip. Untreated and unreported, it had faded into her routine. Investigators began reconstructing the timeline. Mary and Carter had been long-term partners, their relationship fraught with complexity. Her documents and behavior showed she was quietly preparing to leave. But Carter's record and search history suggested he not only sensed her plan, but was responding in his own way, a lethal one. As the investigation deepened, police zeroed in on Carter's motives and the premeditation of the crime. Mary's cautious preparations stood in stark contrast to Carter's criminal history. Every move she made was to avoid conflict, while his every step seemed to pave the way for a final eruption. Carter's phone, unlocked under a search warrant, was sent to a digital forensics lab. Investigators found an unsent text draft time-stamped 48 hours before the murder, reading only, "You think you can leave? I won't let that happen." It had no recipient, but its timing aligned closely with Mary's last interaction with her divorce documents. His phone's geolocation data provided more direct evidence. 3 days before the attack, Carter's phone pinged near the community center Mary frequented, coinciding with her attendance at a counseling session. Street surveillance captured a blurry figure in a dark hoodie, matching Carter's build and posture, lingering for nearly 20 minutes across the street. He didn't enter the building, but his presence wasn't coincidental. It was tracking. A search of Carter's apartment revealed more about his mindset. The space was sparse, a single mattress, a few broken pieces of furniture. But a sheet of paper taped to the wall by his bed listed several names, with Mary's circled and a date written beside it. April 17th, the day of the murder. No other context, but its presence sent a chill through investigators. This wasn't random rage, it was a targeted plan. Mary's digital records continued to fill in the puzzle. An email to a community center counselor titled "Need Advice" read, "He's been too quiet lately, and I don't think it's good. I want to leave, but I'm scared he'll find out." Sent 10 days before the murder, the counselor's reply advised contacting legal aid and preserving evidence. Mary followed through. Her cloud backup contained a folder labeled Safety Plan with apartment lease info, bank statement screenshots, and a photo of a damaged door lock time-stamped 3 weeks prior. Investigators also noted Mary's financial shifts. Over the past month, she made 4 small ATM withdrawals totaling about $1,200, all below reporting thresholds. An envelope in her car held $900 in cash, likely for emergencies. Her search history included Cleveland short-term rentals and how to move without being noticed. These details showed Mary wasn't just planning to leave. She was minimizing the risk of Carter catching on. Forensic analysis solidified the evidence chain. The knife wounds pattern showed precision, with 10 of 14 strikes targeting lethal areas, indicating Carter's clear intent. Microscopic wear on the blade suggested it was sharpened within 24 hours of the attack, inconsistent with spontaneous crime. Carter's blood tests were negative for drugs or alcohol, ruling out emotional volatility. On the legal front, Carter was booked into Cuyahoga County Detention Center at 9:45 p.m. on the night of the murder. During initial questioning, he remained silent, saying only, "I want a lawyer," after confirming his name and rights. His silence forced prosecutors to rely on physical evidence and witness testimony. Carter's clothing, submitted for analysis, showed high-velocity blood spatter on his shirt and pants, consistent with close-range stabbing. Trace blood under his fingernails and inside his sleeve cuffs matched Mary's. The knife's handle bore his clear fingerprints, ruling out anyone else's involvement. Prosecutors filed first-degree murder charges within 72 hours based on premeditation and intent. Ohio law requires proof of a deliberate plan for first-degree murder. Surveillance, phone data, witness statements, and forensic reports formed a tight evidence chain. Carter's court-appointed defense attorney entered a not guilty plea at the first hearing, but filed no substantive motions. The defense appeared to bank on delay, perhaps hoping for gaps in the evidence. But the prosecution's case was near airtight. From the concentrated wounds to Carter's search history to Mary's unsubmitted protective order, every piece pointed to a premeditated act. At a pre-trial hearing, a forensic expert detailed the knife wound's trajectory, noting the attack's efficiency showed Carter's awareness of lethal targets. A witness seated beside Mary gave heartbreaking testimony. She finished a verse, looked at him, and smiled. Then he started. She didn't even have time to drop the book. Mary's family submitted 3 victim impact statements. Her daughter wrote, "She wanted to give us a new life, a home without fear. She almost made it." These didn't alter the legal process, but added human weight, reminding the court this was more than a case. It was a family shattered. Prosecutors cited 3 aggravating factors: the murder's public nature in front of witnesses, the victim's vulnerability due to trust, and the attack's extreme cruelty. These supported a harsher sentence. The defense didn't challenge the evidence, only requesting a psychological evaluation to explore potential mental health defenses. By the trial's start, public attention had surged. Local media ran over 50 articles, often highlighting the prayer meeting's sanctity and Mary's community work. But the courtroom focused on evidence. After 5 days of deliberation, the jury returned a unanimous verdict on July 12, 2022. Carter was guilty of first-degree murder with all aggravating factors upheld. On July 20th, 2022, the Cuyahoga County courtroom in Cleveland was packed to capacity. James Carter stood at the defendant's table, expressionless, silent as ever. The jury's verdict was clear: guilty of first-degree murder, with all three aggravating factors upheld. Ohio law permitted an enhanced sentence, and the judge imposed life imprisonment without parole, effective from the date of arrest, with no reductions. The sentencing memorandum outlined the crime's severity. Carter not only killed Mary in front of witnesses, but exploited her trust, executing the act with extreme cruelty. The judge remarked, "The premeditation and cold precision of this act demonstrate a complete disregard for the victim's life." Mary's family did not attend the sentencing, but their victim impact statements were reread in court. Her sister wrote, "Mary gave everything to protect us all. Her kindness was her greatest strength and her greatest vulnerability." The words lingered, a reminder that this tragedy didn't just claim a life, it shattered a family's hope. Carter's defense team filed no appeal. His silence defined the legal process. No confession, no remorse, not even an attempt at self-defense. A psychological evaluation noted his calm demeanor in custody, with no signs of mental illness, ruling out any mental health-based defense. The case's aftermath rippled quickly. Cleveland women's advocacy groups held a press conference outside the courthouse, calling for reforms to domestic violence warning systems. A spokesperson said bluntly, "Mary wasn't the first and she won't be the last. Her death wasn't an isolated incident. It was a systemic failure." They highlighted Carter's probation violations, unheeded psychological recommendations, and Mary's unsubmitted protective order as missed signals lost in bureaucratic delays. Media coverage propelled Mary's story nationwide, with headlines ranging from prayer meeting bloodbath to fall of a community pillar, sparking widespread discussion. Some articles focused on Mary's community work, others on the hidden nature of domestic violence. An Ohio newspaper ran an editorial, "What Did We Miss?" questioning why Carter's repeated violent history didn't trigger stricter oversight. Post-trial, the Ohio Department of Corrections launched an internal audit, confirming Carter violated probation at least 3 times before the murder, including missing anger management sessions and failing to report to his officer. These were logged but not acted upon. The audit also noted that Mary's unsubmitted protective order, combined with her search history and counseling, could have triggered a high-risk alert through integrated data. But the system didn't connect the dots. Mary's community center halted public events, and some volunteers left. Her daughter moved in with relatives, declining media interviews. The church's prayer meetings shifted online, trying to preserve some unity, but many members admitted Mary's absence changed everything. Carter's prison records listed him as a high-risk inmate, held in solitary with no visitors. A note found among his belongings read, "She shouldn't have pushed me, but it was never used in court." An unreleased surveillance video showed him parked near Mary's home 2 weeks before the murder, watching silently for nearly an hour. Unused at trial, it confirmed what investigators long suspected: this was calculated retribution. The legal case closed, but the questions it raised lingered. Advocacy groups used Mary's case in policy briefs, pushing for an automated high-risk domestic violence alert system, integrating probation violations, psychological reports, and victim counseling records. The proposal didn't pass Ohio's legislature in 2022, but it planted seeds for future reform. Mary's story became a warning. Her caution, her planning, her kindness couldn't shield her from a threat the system saw but failed to stop. Her death was not just a personal tragedy, but the cost of societal oversight. At the community center, a quiet plaque was hung, bearing Mary's name and the words, "For peace, she gave everything." If you've ever felt unsafe or know someone struggling in silence, Mary's story is a reminder. Trust your instincts, speak up early, and check on those around you. Systems may fail, but we cannot.